The foundation of simplicity. Lessons from scarcity. During the Great Depression, millions of families across the globe found themselves stripped of luxury, choice, and comfort. Lavish dinners turned into shared loaves of bread, fancy dates transformed into long walks through dusty streets. There were no five-star vacations or extravagant gifts. All they had was each other. And somehow, in many cases, that was enough. Why? Because adversity doesn't destroy relationships. It reveals their true foundation. When life was stripped down to its bare bones, relationships were forced to either collapse or grow roots in simplicity. People learned to love without expectation. Couples leaned into emotional presence rather than material offerings. They found joy in eye contact, connection in conversation, and intimacy in shared struggle. There were no distractions, no constant comparisons, no endless options on a screen. Just two people side by side, facing the unknown together. Now, fast forward to our modern era. We're surrounded by abundance and choice, yet somehow we are lonelier than ever. Relationships are often defined by what someone does for you, how much they spend, how much they give, how fast they reply. But what if we took a page from history? What if we returned to the roots of real love, presence over presence, attention over attraction, and patience over performance? The Great Depression taught us that love is not built in comfort, but carved out of challenge. When people had nothing, they gave their time. They offered their kindness. They supported one another through pain, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. That's the kind of love that doesn't fade. That's the kind of relationship that isn't shaken by a bad day or a low bank balance. It's the kind that strengthens when tested. This is your call to remember that simplicity is not a weakness in love. It is a power. When you strip away the noise, the filters, the materialism, what are you left with? That answer will tell you the truth about your connection. Do you have a relationship rooted in reality, or one built on the shifting sands of convenience? Let the lessons of the Great Depression guide you back to what matters most. Being there, showing up, listening, laughing even when there's little to celebrate, holding hands even when there's no clear path forward. When everything else falls away, will you still choose each other? Because that's what love looked like during the darkest days of history. And that's what it can look like again, if you're willing to embrace simplicity and choose connection over conditions. Emotional resilience, how hardship strengthens the heart. When we look back at the era of the Great Depression, we don't just see economic turmoil, we see the emotional weight that individuals and couples had to carry. Job losses weren't just financial blows, they were hits to identity, security, and self-worth. Families lost homes, routines vanished, and dreams were put on pause. But amid all that uncertainty, something powerful emerged: emotional resilience. People had to lean into one another like never before. They didn't have therapists on speed dial or relationship coaches on Instagram. What they had was raw, unfiltered emotion. They cried together, grieved together, and somehow they still found a way to smile together. The struggle taught them how to weather emotional storms, not just survive them, but bond through them. Now think about your own relationship today. How often do you expect things to always be happy, easy, and convenient? We've been sold this idea that love should be constant bliss. But that's not love. That's fantasy. Real love is forged in discomfort. It's built during the days when everything feels like it's falling apart, and yet you both choose not to walk away. That's emotional resilience. During the Great Depression, many couples lost almost everything except each other. And in holding on to one another, they developed strength most people today can barely comprehend. They didn't have the luxury of giving up easily. Divorce wasn't a default. Running wasn't the first reaction. They stuck it out, not because they had no choice, but because commitment meant something deeper. So what can we learn from that? First, that emotional strength is not something you're born with. It's something you build. And second, that you build it by facing problems together, not turning against each other, not blaming one another, but standing shoulder to shoulder, then when your world shakes. When you face trials with your partner, you are gifted the opportunity to create a deeper emotional bond. Every hardship is a test, not just of your patience, but of your loyalty. When you fight through the hard days together, your love becomes something far greater than romance. It becomes endurance. It becomes legacy. Modern relationships often fall apart, not because people are bad, but because they've never been taught how to suffer together. We've been conditioned to think that discomfort is a sign something is wrong. But in truth, discomfort is often the very thing that forges lasting bonds. The Great Depression taught us that love isn't just about sharing joy. It's about sharing burdens. If you want something real, stop chasing perfect, start building strong. And remember, every storm you endure together is one more reason to never let go. Sacrifice and selflessness, the lost language of love. In today's fast-paced, me-first culture, the words sacrifice and selflessness often sound outdated. But if we turn back the pages of history to the Great Depression, we find these values at the heart of every lasting relationship. Couples and families didn't just survive that era by luck. They survived because they practiced a level of selflessness we rarely see today. During the Great Depression, sacrifice was not just a virtue, it was a daily act. A wife might skip a meal so her children could eat. A husband might work 3 jobs, none of them glamorous, just to put bread on the table. Young couples learned early on that love wasn't about flowers or fancy dinners. Love was about giving, even when you had very little left to give. What does that mean for us now? It means that real love requires us to look beyond ourselves. It asks us to put the well-being of the relationship above momentary pleasure or personal comfort. It means sometimes you give without receiving, and you do it not because you're weak, but because you're committed. Too often today, relationships are treated like transactions. What can you do for me? How are you making me feel right now? And the moment someone feels slightly inconvenienced, they check out emotionally. But the truth is, no meaningful relationship can thrive in that mindset. Sacrifice is the glue that holds 2 people together when life gets hard. And it will get hard. The Great Depression showed us that relationships grounded in selflessness can weather the worst storms. Couples didn't ask, "What am I getting out of this?" They asked, "What can I do to make sure we both make it through?" That kind of mindset doesn't just make love stronger, it makes it unbreakable. Imagine what our modern relationships could look like if we relearned that kind of giving. What if we replaced ego with this? The empathy? What if we prioritized listening over being right? What if we saw sacrifice not as a burden, but as an expression of deep, unconditional love? Sacrifice in a relationship doesn't mean losing yourself. It means loving enough to sometimes put the other person first. It means giving them space when they're overwhelmed. It means holding your tongue in moments of anger because you value peace more than pride. And most importantly, it means showing up every day, not because it's easy, but because you've chosen to love intentionally. The Great Depression reminds us that selfless love is not weak, it's warrior-like. It fights, it endures, it gives without expecting applause. If we want relationships that last, we must stop idolizing ease and start honoring effort. Let your love be known not by what you say, but by what you're willing to sacrifice when times get tough. That's where the real power of love lives. Not in moments of comfort, but in acts of quiet, consistent, selfless devotion. Appreciation over entitlement, the forgotten gratitude. If there's one lesson from the Great Depression that modern relationships desperately need, it's this. Appreciation is the oxygen of love. In the 1930s, people didn't have much, but they cherished every small act, every shared meal, every moment of togetherness. Why? Because when life stripped everything away, they learned to value what remained, each other. Contrast that with today's world, where many relationships crumble under the weight of unspoken expectations. We live in a time where we expect our partners to be mind readers, emotional healers, financial providers, entertainers, and spiritual guides, all at once. And when they fall short in one area, we fixate on the flaw instead of appreciating the effort. But back in the Depression era, gratitude wasn't just a polite word. It was a survival strategy. A warm cup of coffee shared between 2 people was more than a beverage. It was a symbol of care. A hand-sewn patch on a worn-out shirt wasn't seen as something to be embarrassed by. It was a sign that someone loved you enough to mend what was broken. That kind of gratitude kept love alive through scarcity and hardship. We've forgotten how powerful a thank you can be. In a time when we swipe through lives and love is often reduced to convenience, genuine appreciation stands out like gold. It's not about grand gestures, it's about acknowledging the small ones. Saying, "I see you, I value you. I'm grateful for what you do, even when it's not perfect. Entitlement is the silent killer of many modern relationships. When you start believing that someone owes you affection, attention, or devotion, you stop recognizing those things as gifts. And what we don't appreciate, we begin to abuse or neglect. But when you approach love with gratitude, you breathe life into it. You begin to see your partner not as someone whom you meet all your needs, but as someone who chooses to love you day after day, and that's a miracle in itself. During the Great Depression, couples stayed together not because everything was perfect, but because they focused on what was still good. They didn't have the luxury of constant comparison. There was no social media showing curated versions of relationships. All they had was each other, and for many, that was more than enough. Imagine what would change in your relationship if you stopped keeping score and started saying thank you more often. Thank you for listening. Thank you for trying. Thank you for coming home. Thank you for staying, even when things got hard. That kind of gratitude creates a safe, emotional space, a foundation where love can grow freely, even in tough times. The Great Depression taught us that when we lose everything, we learn to appreciate anything. Let's not wait for tragedy to learn how to value one another. Let's bring back appreciation, not just as a reaction to hardship, but as a daily expression of love. Because in the end, relationships that thrive are not built on constant demands, but on consistent, heartfelt appreciation. Love that endures, commitment beyond comfort. In a time when divorce rates were low, not because relationships were easy, but because commitment was deep, the Great Depression taught us a powerful truth. Love isn't about how good things are. It's about how strong you stay when they're not. Back then, relationships weren't driven by fleeting emotions, instant gratification, or escape routes. They were rooted in endurance. People stayed when things got hard, not because they didn't have problems, but because they understood this one simple truth. You don't abandon what you've built just because it's under construction. Today, we live in a disposable culture. If something breaks, we throw it away and replace it. That mentality has seeped into relationships. We scroll through people like products. One conflict? Swipe. One flaw? Replace. One miscommunication? Block. But here's the thing. If you keep replacing, you'll never repair. If you keep walking away, you'll never experience the depth that comes from working through something. During the Depression, couples didn't have that option. They had to work together to survive, literally. Love was tested not by emotional compatibility quizzes, but by real-life trials, hunger, homelessness, hopelessness, and yet many of those relationships outlasted the toughest economic era in modern history. Why? Because their commitment wasn't tied to comfort, it was tied to purpose. They didn't just love each other, they leaned on each other. They built their relationship on teamwork, shared sacrifice, and mutual respect. That's the kind of love that endures. That's the kind of love that grows stronger through adversity, not weaker. And we need to revive that today. Ask yourself, is your relationship built to endure, or is it built to entertain? Are you in love with the person, or just the version of them that pleases you? When life hits hard, your relationship will be tested, not in the good times, but in the valleys. And it's in those valleys that commitment becomes the glue. The truth is, long-lasting relationships are never free from challenges. In fact, they've just learned how to face them together. They've fought through doubts, through financial troubles, through emotional breakdowns, not perfectly, but persistently. You see, love isn't just a feeling, it's a decision, a daily decision to stay, to try, to communicate, to forgive, and to keep showing up, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. That's what separates shallow love from enduring love. The couples of the Great Depression remind us that commitment is not bondage, it's freedom. The freedom to build something real. The freedom to be vulnerable without fear. The freedom to trust someone enough to grow through pain, not walk away from it. So, if you're in a relationship today, stop asking, is this still making me happy? And start asking, am I still committed to growing with this person? Because happiness is fleeting, but commitment, real commitment, creates something happiness never could. An unshakable foundation that can weather any storm. Rebuilding together, the power of shared vision. One of the most profound lessons from the Great Depression isn't just about surviving tough times. It's about how people rebuilt their lives together. Relationships weren't merely about enduring difficulty. They were about rising from it, side by side. When everything fell apart, when homes were lost, jobs disappeared, and dreams shattered, couples didn't just sit in despair. They started over, together. They planted gardens, not just to eat, but to hope. They found odd jobs, shared meals, and looked at each other not with blame, but with belief. That's the power of a shared vision. It gives people a reason to keep moving forward, even when everything says stop. Today, many relationships lack that deeper bond because there's no common direction. People enter partnerships without asking, where are we going? What are we building? What does our future look like, together? When hard times come, and they always do, this lack of clarity leaves couples feeling lost and divided. But when a couple has a shared vision, a unified goal, their relationship becomes a mission. They don't fight each other. They fight for each other. They face the world not as two individuals competing for attention, validation, or control, but as a team, pushing forward with one heart and one focus. Back in the Depression era, rebuilding wasn't glamorous. It was hard. It was slow. It required grit, humility, and relentless faith. But through that struggle, relationships grew deeper. The man who worked 2 jobs didn't complain. He knew he was building something with his wife. The woman who rationed food didn't sulk. She knew her sacrifice was part of a bigger picture. They understood this truth. When 2 people share the same vision, even brokenness becomes a foundation. They saw beyond the moment. They looked each other in the eyes and said, we're going to get through this, and we're going to build something even stronger. That mindset is rare today. Many people quit before they even try to rebuild. They want ready-made relationships that require no sacrifice. But there's no such thing. Every strong relationship you admire has scars behind its smiles. Rebuilding is messy, but it's also meaningful. So ask yourself, do we have a vision together? Do we talk about our future, not just in terms of feelings, but in terms of goals, values, and legacy? Because love without direction is like a car without a destination. You're just burning fuel, going nowhere. Rebuilding together means holding the blueprint of your dreams in one hand and holding each other in the other. It means being patient through the process and proud of every small victory. It means staying up late, not to argue, but to plan, not to point fingers, but to point forward. Let the example of those who came before us remind you. It's not about how fast you rebuild. It's about never quitting the process. In love, rebuilding together is one of the most powerful acts of unity. It transforms suffering into strength. It turns temporary loss into long-term love. And most of all, it proves that even after the storm, you can still build a home together. The strength of silent sacrifice. Choosing commitment over comfort. One of the greatest yet most overlooked lessons from the Great Depression is the silent strength of sacrifice, especially within relationships. The kind of sacrifice that isn't flashy. The kind that doesn't demand attention or applause. It's the quiet commitment to love someone even when it hurts, even when it's inconvenient, and even when you receive nothing in return. During the Great Depression, many couples made sacrifices not because they had to, but because they wanted to protect each other's dignity. Husbands would walk miles to find work just so their wives wouldn't worry. Wives would sew old clothes into something usable just so their children wouldn't feel poor. They didn't post it. They didn't seek validation. They just did it. Because that's what love looked like back then. In today's world, we often equate love with comfort. We believe that if it's not easy, it must not be right. If we're not constantly feeling butterflies, something's wrong. But the truth is, real love is forged in fire, not in fairy tale. And the fire doesn't always come with passion. It often comes with pressure, poverty, pain, and problems that test the limits of your soul. And this is where silent sacrifice shines. When you choose to stay, when it would be easier to leave. That is love. When you listen even though you're tired, that is love. When you work a little harder, give a little more, bend a little further, not because you're being forced to, but because you want to, That is love rooted in strength. The Depression-era couples didn't have marriage podcasts or self-help gurus. They had resilience. They had humility. They understood that relationships weren't about what's in it for me, but rather, how can I serve you, protect you, lift you? And the paradox is that this selfless love often led to the deepest personal fulfillment. Today, people run at the first sign of discomfort. But those who last, the ones who go the distance, are those who've learned the sacred beauty of sacrifice. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because they see the value in building something greater than themselves. Silent sacrifice also means swallowing pride. It means choosing peace over being right. It means understanding that every argument doesn't need a winner, but every relationship does need a healer. Sacrifice is less about giving something up and more about pouring something in, your time, energy, patience, and presence. That's what made Depression-era relationships extraordinary. They were defined not by luxury, but by loyalty, not by convenience, but by conviction. So ask yourself, are you willing to give quietly without being noticed? Are you willing to sacrifice your ego to protect your love? Because in the end, the strongest relationships are not built by the loudest lovers, but by the quiet warriors who love through storms, give without applause, and keep choosing their partner over and over again, especially when it's hardest. That kind of love doesn't go viral, but it does go deep. And it's the kind of love that doesn't just survive history. It makes history, building love like brick and mortar, slow, intentional, and resilient. During the Great Depression, building anything, whether a house, a career, or a relationship, required brick-by-brick persistence. There was no shortcut, no instant gratification. If you wanted something strong, you had to lay every single brick with care, patience, and intention. And that's exactly how relationships were built. Today we live in an age of speed. Fast food, fast communication, fast relationships. Swipe, match, chat, ghost. People want deep connection without deep effort. They want forever with someone they've only known for a moment. But the Great Depression teaches us that love built too fast usually falls apart just as quickly. Real love is constructed, not discovered. It's not a magical moment. It's a daily commitment to show up, even when you're exhausted. It's realizing that connection isn't just chemistry, it's consistency. The couples of that era didn't wait for fireworks. They lit their own small flame every day and protected it from the winds of struggle and despair. Think about a mason building a wall. He doesn't throw the bricks up randomly and hope it stands. He places each one carefully, aligns it, checks its balance, and applies mortar with precision. That's how Depression-era couples approached love. One word, one decision, one day at a time. No rushing, no skipping steps, just deliberate, intentional effort. And here's the powerful part. The slow build is the strong build. When you take your time learning your partner's soul, when you build emotional safety brick by brick, when you take time to communicate, to listen, to grow together, you create something earthquake-proof, something that doesn't collapse at the first sign of conflict, something that can weather financial struggles, personal failures, family issues, and even loneliness. Too many relationships today are paper houses, beautiful on the outside but hollow inside. Why? Because they skipped the slow work. They mistook passion for permanence. They wanted the benefits of love without paying the price of patience. If the Great Depression taught us anything, it's this: endurance beats excitement. The couples who made it through weren't the ones with the most romance. They were the ones who refused to quit, who saw love not as an emotion, but as a project they were willing to work on every single day. So ask yourself, are you laying strong bricks in your relationship, or are you just stacking fragile feelings and hoping they'll hold? Love that lasts a lifetime is not a feeling. It's a fortress, built slowly, steadily, and with sacred care. The world may have moved on from the slow and steady path, but if you want love that stands through every season, take a page from history, pick up your tools, and build it brick by brick. Because the relationships that stand the test of time, they're never built in a rush, they're built to last. When love is tested, its true strength is revealed. The Great Depression wasn't just a time of economic collapse. It was a time of soul-deep awakening. It stripped people of comfort but gifted them clarity. It took away luxury, but in return, it revealed what truly mattered: faith, family, loyalty, and love that endures through storms. That era taught us that relationships are not made in good times. They are proven in hardship. When everything falls apart, money, status, plans, it's the person who stays beside you in the wreckage that shows you what real love looks like. In today's world, we've been conditioned to avoid discomfort, to walk away when it gets hard, to ghost, to replace, to distract ourselves with the next shiny thing. But the Depression-era spirit whispers a different truth. Don't run, rebuild. Don't quit, commit. When love is tested, don't throw it away. Temper it like steel. Look at the world now. Relationships break down over misunderstandings. People give up over disagreements. But what if we approached love like our grandparents did? What if we believed in repairing, not replacing, in talking, not texting out, in facing conflict, not fleeing from it? The Depression didn't allow people to live in fantasy. It forced them to face life as it was and love as it should be: raw, real, resilient. They learned that intimacy is not built in candlelight, it's built in crisis. That loyalty is not tested on date nights, it's tested in darkness. That true companionship is forged when two people are hungry, tired, frustrated, and still choose each other. Maybe that's what we need to relearn today. Because love isn't found, it's fought for. Connection isn't instant, it's cultivated. And strong relationships aren't easy, they're earned. So as you reflect on your own relationships, ask yourself, are you loving with the same strength, grit, and grace that those before us did? Are you building your love on the foundation of patience, persistence, and principles? Or are you chasing moments when you should be building memories? Are you running from discomfort when you should be digging deeper? Because love, real love, is not afraid of storms. It becomes stronger because of them. The Great Depression didn't destroy love. It refined it. It reminded humanity that when everything is taken from you, love is what you still get to give. So build your love like they did, with time, with trust, with tenacity. Let your relationship be your legacy, something that outlives seasons, struggles, and setbacks. And remember, don't look for perfect love. Look for persistent love. Don't wait for a flawless partner. Be a faithful one. And when life gets hard, don't run away. Reach deeper. Because the strongest relationships aren't built in times of ease, they're forged in fire. Let the lessons of the past guide the love you build today. And when the storms come, as they always do, stand firm. Because real love never quits. It rises,